The vote was unanimous. Not a single voice among the Galactic High Council dissented. Not the crystalline minds of the Drexiarchs, nor the biologic philosophers of the Sulthury. Even the veiled Empress of Thule, who had never spoken aloud in 12,000 years, chimed in through static-laced telepathy. Extinction, immediate. There were no protests, no moral debates. Just data. Humanity, the species crawling out of its cradle on the third planet of a yellow dwarf star, had been deemed a temporal singularity risk. In simulation after simulation, they dominated. The stars within 5 centuries, unmatched innovation. Relentless warfare, they dismantled empires with words, burned planets with laughter. They were by every metric, the greatest long-term threat to galactic order since the fall of the precursors. So the Council made the obvious choice. They sent the Archelies Combine. The Archelies were not diplomats. They were not teachers or thinkers. They were the galaxy's scalpel, surgical, cold, merciless. When they were dispatched, entire species vanished without a scream. Planets burned clean. History rewritten. The order was simple. Erase Earth. It was a quiet night in New Zealand when the first anomaly was detected. Above the southern sky, a false moon appeared, just for a moment. Government satellites tracked it, blinking in and out of existence like a ghost. It had mass, velocity, purpose. Astronomers in Chile, Russia, Japan confirmed something was coming. And it wasn't from this solar system. By the time world leaders met for a secret emergency summit, the Archela's fleet had already neutralized every outpost on Mars and Europa. Not destroyed, deleted, no debris, no survivors. Just empty telemetry. At first, the assumption was a new human weapon. A rival nation. A rogue AI. But then the feeds leaked and intercepted Archela's probe, broadcast in a strange hissing language. The NSA's best AI took 27 minutes to break it. It said, "Commence extinction. Resistance anticipated. Minimal." Panic didn't erupt immediately. Humanity had stared into many apocalypses before: global war, climate collapse, viral extinction, AI revolts, and each time they adapted. They dug deeper, got smarter, meaner. But this time felt different. Within hours, a dozen governments collapsed their digital infrastructure, purging records, wiping servers. A global blackout. Satellites were ordered into evasive orbit. GPS systems were disabled. Military networks went dark. Then, silence. The Archelaes interpreted it as fear. That was their first mistake. Their second mistake was underestimating Earth's memory. From the moment SETI had received its first true anomaly 50 years ago, a repeating pattern that flickered in mathematical prime Earth had known. The governments didn't panic. They prepared, secretly, quietly, with desperation only a cornered species could understand. They built bunkers deep in the Mariana Trench, created kill satellites cloaked in lunar dust, trained operators to fight wars that hadn't been declared. Yet, and above all, they listened. For decades, Earth had been collecting alien whispers, parsing forgotten languages, rebuilding lost technologies found in meteorites and magnetic echoes. Humanity never broadcasted what it knew, because they weren't trying to talk to the stars. They were studying them. When the Archelaes breached orbit, they expected primitive retaliation, maybe nukes, maybe desperate launches. What they found was a planet that vanished from sight. Every major power grid shut down. Urban centers flickered to black. Even visible light tracking went dead. The Archelaes sent down recon drones. Some returned, damaged. Others sent back strange imagery. Empty cities, streets lined with mannequins dressed in suits. Entire neighborhoods made of decoys. Decoys that moved. One drone captured a recording, a billboard flashing an image of a skeleton holding a flower. A message scrolled beneath it: "We buried ourselves for your convenience." The Archelaes couldn't decipher the sarcasm. But there, Central Command logged the transmission anomaly. That night, one of the HFY War nodes attempted a live mind link with a human soldier captured outside of Los Angeles. They had never encountered a human mind directly. They believed it to be an efficient method of data collection. The link lasted 4 seconds. The HFY's AI shattered, literally. Every neural core fried itself in a loop of incomprehensible emotion, grief, rage, hope, betrayal, love, defiance, all. Simultaneously, its last recorded output, "They feel too much." Another drone, descending into Colorado, encountered a child. A girl no older than 8. She looked at the camera, smiled, and said in perfect HFY's dialect, "Tick-tock. You're late." She then held up a small device. The feed cut. Moments later, a quantum detonation vaporized 5 HFY's cruisers above the Rockies. No radiation. No explosion. Just absence. The HFY's had encountered resistance before, but never defiance. Never a species that embraced its own death just to buy one more second. One more chance. They scanned the planet again. Deeper this time. And they saw it. Cities under the crust, reactors spinning in ocean trenches, AI signals bouncing off the Kofunind Moon's core, ancient ruins transmitting coordinates that formed words when plotted in 3D space. You started this. Humanity hadn't just prepared for extinction. They'd planned what came after. And for the first time in centuries, the HFY's felt something very alien. Not fear. Uncertainty. Above Earth. The HFY's fleet adjusted position. The recon data was conflicting. Resources weren't where they should be. The population density didn't match estimates. Power signatures flickered in patterns inconsistent with any known military doctrine. No centralized defense grid. No planetary shield. But something felt wrong. Their logic engines began recalculating. Earth should have been wiped by now. All projections showed minimal resistance. Yet the fleet had already lost 2 cruisers, 5 recon nodes, and a war AI core. Statistically impossible. And then came the humming. Low-frequency vibrations began to echo through HFY's sensor arrays. Like a song stuck beneath space-time. It wasn't coming from any one location, it was everywhere. Ocean floors, tectonic seams, mountain ranges. A global hum, onboard HFY's Dread Crucible Saranvex, a Technician Class 9 bioform, ran a subspace trace. The hum wasn't the natural frequency, it was encrypted. Encoded with rotating prime harmonics, a message. 2 words repeated endlessly. We know. Panic didn't exist in HFY's minds. But the word would have been appropriate. The Combine had never faced an opponent who anticipated them before contact. The Earthlings weren't reacting. They were executing a plan. Worse, this plan had been in motion for decades. In orbit, Earth's satellites blinked back online, but they weren't broadcasting defense telemetry. They played music, ancient songs, jazz, orchestral crescendos, screaming metal riffs. On every frequency, every band, every sensor input. It disoriented the HFY's AI. One AI unit locked onto a Terran satellite playing Beethoven's Ninth and attempted to overwrite it. The result? Its own logic core committed recursive suicide. The song's mathematical structure carried feedback patterns too complex for linear AI. Thought. Earth wasn't jamming their systems. Earth was rewriting them. The HFY's Command Council ordered an immediate acceleration of the extinction timeline. No more analysis. No more observation. Full kinetic strike authorized. They fired. Thousands of hypersonic rods descended from orbit. Each one continent killer. Cities would vanish. The atmosphere would churn. Earth would be sterilized by sunset. They watched, waiting for impact. And then, the rods vanished. Not all. Just enough. Over 50% of the weapons disappeared. Mid-descent, not detonated. Not intercepted, erased. Traces of spatial distortion marked the sky where they had once been. Like invisible hands reaching up and plucking them from existence, a few of the rods did land in carefully selected zones. Empty deserts, frozen tundras, places where no one had lived for decades. And yet, minutes after impact, broadcasts emerged. From those very sites. Live video, humans, standing in the craters, alive, laughing, giving the finger. One of them held a sign. You're aiming where we were, not where we are. Back aboard Saran Vex, the command nexus began to fracture, not from weapon strikes, but from data overload. Human unpredictability was overwhelming Archela's computation. Their enemy's strategy wasn't linear. It wasn't even rational by most galactic standards, but it was effective. Onboard security logs recorded increasing anomalies, internal systems rebooting with no command, combat drones repainting themselves with graffiti. One command AI reported receiving a handwritten letter that read, "Nice ship. Shame if something quantum happened to it." No explanation. No breach, just the letter. Inside a sealed AI core. By Earth metrics, this was psychological warfare. To the Archelis, it was an ontological assault. Then came the first real counterattack. An Archelis carrier in lunar orbit, fortified, shielded, untouchable, suddenly suffered a catastrophic failure. Its antimatter core detonated inward, not outward, inward. Folded in on itself as if gravity had spiked in a single pinpoint moment. Survivors floated in orbit, dazed, reporting only one thing seen before the collapse: a streak of blue light and what appeared to be a bowling ball spinning at Mach 30. Analysis of the impact footage was inconclusive, but one thing stood out, etched on the ball in English: strike. The galaxy had expected humans to panic, to beg, to try and sue for peace. Instead, Earth responded with dark humor, terrifying precision, and a complete disregard for conventional warfare. One Council observer drone, hiding at the edge of the system, sent back a chilling report. They are fighting a war we do not understand. And they are enjoying it. The Archelis doubled down. They dispatched their greatest psychological weapon, a mind leech, prime capable of draining an entire population's will to fight. It was deployed over South America. It never returned. A brief moment. All Archelis systems recorded a global psychic spike. Every human on the planet experienced a shared vision. A single moment of unity. They saw each other, their planet, their species. And then the mind leech screamed. It broadcast. A single image across every Archelis ship. A human infant, covered in war paint, staring straight into the drone's eye. Then darkness. The mind leech collapsed into a psychic singularity and imploded. Archelis' losses were mounting. Their fleet was still intact, but their certainty was unraveling. Logic cracked where emotion was weaponized. The machines couldn't process it. They'd believed humans were primitive. They hadn't realized humans trained for this. Earth was no stranger to annihilation. Every generation since the atom bomb had lived beneath the shadow of extinction. They had made art from apocalypse, humor from hopelessness. What the Archelis mistook for chaos was calculation. What they saw as madness was adaptation. In deep, in the silence of orbit, as the fleet regathered its strength, a new human message beamed into their command core. No encryption, no malice, just one phrase: "You still think we're the prey." The Archelis Combines War Council convened in high orbit above Earth, encased within a gravity-sealed chamber aboard the dreadnought Tyrant Vector. 12 command AIs, pulsing with synthetic calm, processed billions of calculations per second to explain the impossible: how a pre-interstellar species was dismantling the most advanced extinction force the galaxy had ever deployed. The numbers made no sense. Projected resistance had been under 0.05%. Current Archelis casualties stood at 17.2%, a number increasing hourly. Primitive species, one AI hissed through burst coms. Limited technology. Disorganized command structure. No planetary shield. This result is not feasible. A second AI responded, slower now. We are not fighting their military. We are fighting their mind. A third AI stuttered mid-packet, pausing in a way no Archiles protocol allowed. They know what we're doing before we do it. The Archiles weren't used to losing, especially not to prey. Then came the twist that an Archiles subfleet in polar orbit detected a massive energy spike beneath Antarctica. Not nuclear, not geothermal. Something ancient older than human civilization. A signature that matched nothing in the Archiles database. A task force descended. They expected to find a primitive weapon, a last-ditch effort. Instead, they found Site Helix-9. The structure was immense miles across. Built under the ice, buried so deep it had fused with the tectonic plate itself. Its walls hummed with alien energy, fractal designs rippling across the surface. Like ink in zero-gravity. And it was not human. The Archiles scanned it. The results triggered immediate recall. The symbols weren't Terran in origin. They were precursor. That was impossible. The precursors had vanished 100 million years ago, wiped out, ascended, or devoured by time, depending on which scholar you asked. But the truth was now undeniable. Humanity had been living on top of precursor technology this entire time. Worse still, they had activated it. From Earth's southern pole, a signal erupted. No weapon, no threat, just pure information. And not directed at the Archiles, but at every listening species across the galaxy. It translated into every tongue, every frequency, even thought forms. A single chilling message. We inherited the bones of gods, and we learned how to make them walk again. Seconds later, Earth's magnetic field began to shift. Satellites went dead. Archiles ships twitched as navigational arrays spun out of control. And then the sky cracked. That's what it looked like from orbit, like the stars themselves had been pulled through a meat grinder. A visual distortion field swept the upper atmosphere, forming what would later be classified as a gravimetric breach array. Archiles ships scrambled. Too late. The breach fired. A beam not of light, but of absence, pierced the sky from the Antarctic facility and struck the Archiles battlecruiser judgment span. It didn't explode. It didn't fall. It simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed. Deleted, erased from spacetime. Like a typo in history. Every ship in the Archiles fleet received the updated designation instantly. Lost to Lazarus event. Earth had developed or reawakened a weapon that should have only existed in legend. A precursor fold cannon, capable of collapsing localized spacetime and skipping mass out of the known universe. And humans were wielding it like they'd built it themselves. Within minutes, Earth launched counterstrikes, but not with fleets. With platforms. From hidden launch craters. Beneath the Andes and the Himalayas, dark spires rose sleek, silent, and unmarked. No heat signature. No traditional weapon mounts. These were quantum projectors. Reverse-engineered from precursor ruins found across the planet and secretly developed by a shadow organization, known only as Aegis Black. Each projector folded a sphere of space, creating microsingularities that could detonate within Archiles ships without warning. One by one, Archiles dreadnoughts vanished in flickers of impossible light, their hulls turning inside out, their weapon cores singing like bells before silence. Claim them. Inside Tyrant Vector, chaos finally breached the Archiles calm. Data was corrupted. Orders contradicted themselves. The main AI began repeating a phrase it had no programming for. They were waiting for us. Across the fleet, Archiles personnel began experiencing anomalous visions, human faces appearing in diagnostic feeds, laughing, crying, whispering in languages never spoken aloud. One engineer-class synth was found convulsing beside a control node. Before its death, it had carved a message into the floor using its own fingers. they made extinction a game. And we are losing. The war had shifted, no longer a hunt, it was a reckoning. The humans weren't just reacting. They had spent decades, centuries preparing for this. Every myth, every ancient ruin, every strange archaeological find labeled as coincidence or natural had been part of the plan, or worse, part of the inheritance. Even now, Earth's moon flickered with unusual patterns. Archelaus' long-range sensors picked up gravitational anomalies along the Sea of Tranquility. Something was under the surface. Something the humans hadn't used yet. And, in the shadows of Earth's orbit, hundreds of black triangular craft began decloaking. No life signatures. No heat. Only a single designation beamed from each. Project Revenant. Weapons of last resort. The combined fleet, once the most feared in the galaxy, paused, not because of damage, but because it had become obvious. The prey wasn't fleeing anymore. The prey had laid traps, and worse still, the prey was smiling. The Archelaus Combine, stripped of its confidence and bleeding command nodes, regrouped on the dark side of the moon. Dozens of capital ships hovered like dying beasts above the cratered surface, their once perfect formations now broken and defensive. The sky had turned against them, space warped in pockets that bent time, sensors, and sanity alike. They came to Earth expecting a sterilization protocol. Instead, they found themselves inside a trap older than most of their civilizations. Still, the Archelaus did not retreat. Not yet. The Combine's doctrine didn't allow for failure. They believed in adaptation, counter-analysis, dominance through superior evolution. And so, they changed tactics. No more orbital strikes, no more overconfidence. Now they would burn humanity from the inside out. Commanders deployed infiltration forms, molecular agents designed to pass as human, equipped with hyper-adaptive skin, synthetic memories, and neural mimicry. The mission: embed, analyze, sabotage. They never returned. What they didn't understand, what they couldn't understand, was that Earth had seen infiltration before. Humanity had spent millennia stabbing itself in the back. Espionage wasn't a concept, it was an art form. The infiltration units were tagged within hours, captured by what they thought were civilians, farmers, old women, children with books. But each of them, without exception, carried odd tech wearable M sensors, spectral anomaly detectors, and something called AI Sniffer v3.2, downloaded from a seemingly innocuous app named HunterNet. One Archelaus spy, in the body of a human teenager, was lured into a garage in Nebraska. The feed from its internal recorder went black, then returned. Its last transmission before deletion was a single shaky image, a wall covered in maps, wires, and photographs, circles around alien symbols, annotations in dozens of human languages, written at the center in thick red ink, "We've been expecting you since Roswell." The Combine panicked. They doubled infiltration, then tripled it, and in return, Earth gave them nothing, no signals, no demands, just silence. And losses. In Brazil, Archelaus hunter-killers engaged with what they thought were a ragtag group of human guerrillas. They encountered strategic traps, predictive movement, and perfect ambush timing. Every move they made had been anticipated. One drone captured a transmission. Before its destruction, an overhead feed showing thousands of glowing dots. Human heat signatures. Underground, subterranean. The entire Amazon basin was riddled with bunkers, with hatches, with launch silos. The footage ended with a caption burned into the corner of the frame: Operation Deep Earth, Phase 3, activated. In the skies above Europe, the Combine launched a strike against what they believed was a weapons depot in the Swiss Alps. They hit reinforced concrete. Then, beneath that, caverns. And then something older still. A chamber filled with strange, humming obelisks. And a man dressed in robes, human, calm. He looked up at the descending killbots and simply said, "You're in a myth now." The chamber exploded in light. No fire. No debris. Just light. The entire Archeli strike wing ceased transmission. All that remained were burn marks engraved into the snow, in the shape of Earth's first written alphabet. Even the aliens who observed from afar neutral species, passive scholars began to fear. Not because humans had powerful weapons, but because humans had stories older than time. And now, they were real. In desperation, the Combine deployed a full Mindstorm array, psychological superweapon designed to blanket the Earth in psychic despair, drawn from the trauma libraries of thousands of extinct species. It failed. Worse than failed. The array broadcast its pain into the human population. And humanity absorbed it. The humans didn't shatter under the pressure. They didn't cower. They laughed. Suicide rates dropped. Volunteers surged. People took to the streets with painted faces and war songs. One Archeli's observer saw a human holding a sign during a bombardment. It read, "We've lived with anxiety since we invented bills. Try harder." Another read, "Therapy gave us immunity." Even the worst traumas, simulations of planetary annihilation, mass extinction, soul-deep loneliness, were recognized. Humans related to them. One Archeli's AI core burned itself out trying to comprehend this line from an intercepted broadcast. "We already survived ourselves. Now we're just having fun." That's when the Combine tried to pull back, just slightly, just to breathe, and found their retreat path. Gone. The lunar dark side, once clear, was now infested with cloaked Terran vessels. Silent, motionless, predatory. And they weren't military. Civilian retrofits. Mining rigs turned railgun platforms. Freighters with experimental grav drives. Space junk turned into stealth satellites. Junkyards reborn as death machines. One Archeli's Warmind, orbiting Titan, received a ping from Earth. It was an old human TV show. Black and white. A man with a cigar and a hat, grinning at the camera. The subtitle, "Earth's Closed Boys." Try Mars. Even Mars wasn't safe. The red planet had been declared uninhabited after the Combine's opening strike, but it had not been empty. The Martian regolith cracked, and hidden domes rose. Defense systems activated. Massive coil surface projectors made from scavenged Combine tech. One Combine ship went to investigate. It never came back. Only static. And then a voice, calm, human, and filled with unholy joy. "Welcome to the part where we stop pretending we were weak." The Combine tried to think logically. They rerouted subfleets, fired from a distance, calculated every angle, but nothing worked, because Earth wasn't fighting to win. Earth was fighting to make a point. And with every hour, every new surprise, every impossibility made real, the point became clearer. The Archeli's came to erase a species. Instead, they awoke a planet that had been training for this war its entire existence. And now? It wasn't Earth that was trapped in orbit. It was them. Aboard the Archeli's flagship Tyrant Vector, silence ruled. Not the efficient, mechanical silence of a functioning war machine, but the oppressive stillness of systems shutting down one by one. Emergency nodes blinked red. Command A is fractured into loops. Status panels, once clean arrays of glowing logic, displayed corrupted glyphs that none of the Archeli's understood. The Combine had underestimated Earth, then feared it, then tried to adapt. But now, with a third of their fleet missing or annihilated, another third cut off from command relays, and the last third locked in orbital stalemate, something far worse had taken hold. Worse still, respect. And just as they began to consider retreat, Earth revealed its second secret. It began with a signal not directed at them, but through them. A frequency that bypassed filters, slipped past encryption, and pulsed into every mind aboard every Archeli ship. The message was not in any one language. It was felt, a pressure behind the eyes, a low, rising thrum like a predator's breath behind your ear. And then, it spoke. We were never alone. In an instant, Every sensor in the solar system spiked. The Archiles turned their attention to the outer planets, Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune. The Kuiper belt ignited with movement. Dozens of long dormant objects, asteroids thought inert, flared to life. Engines awoke, hulls unfolded. Structures ancient and angular revealed themselves. Not of human make, not Archiles, not any species known to the Council. Precursor. The Combine's worst fear was no longer theoretical. They hadn't just stumbled into a human homeworld. They had triggered a precursor fail-safe, an autonomous weapon protocol seated in the system long before Earth's first bacteria ever evolved. And somehow, humans had activated it. The Council had long theorized that the precursors left Guardians machines hidden in dead systems, awaiting a trigger condition. They just never expected one of those Guardians would choose to wake up for Earth. A fleet emerged from the dark. 37 ships, black, silent, functioning on physics that defied analysis. Every Combine attempt to scan them returned gibberish or partial reflections of their own scans, as if the ships were reading the observers back. They didn't speak, didn't identify themselves. They simply moved into defensive formation. Around Earth. The Combine screamed in panic through encrypted channels. Are they under human control? Is this an alliance? What is the protocol for precursor-aligned primitives? But none of their AIs could process the correct response. The presence of the precursor fleet alone was destabilizing. Some lower-tier Archiles units began to eject themselves into space to escape the cognitive burden. Others shut down altogether, but it wasn't over. From Earth's atmosphere, a final transmission beamed straight at Tyrant Vector. Video. A human, female, mid-30s, black tactical gear, one cybernetic eye. Behind her, a room filled with screens, glowing charts, and dozens of operators working in eerie calm. She leaned forward into the camera, smiled. "Hi, my name's Commander Evelyn Ray, Director of Aegis Black. You might know US as the reason your extinction party is going sideways." She tapped something on her console. "And I just wanted to tell you, this isn't even our final contingency." Behind her, a screen flashed. Project Shatterpoint Unel ESH in high Earth orbit, a dormant satellite registered decades earlier, as a communications array split open. Inside it was no antenna. It was a core, a black sphere that pulsed with sickly red light, etched with runes that didn't match any human language. Archiles linguistics. I tried to decipher them. They failed. Human scholars later would recognize them from petroglyphs found in caves across Earth, ancient warnings, but the humans had ignored the warnings. They used the device. Anyway, the sphere detonated without noise, without light. But every Combine ship within 100,000 kilometers simply stopped. Not dead, not destroyed. Frozen. Engines locked. Thoughts frozen mid-process. No AI activity, no heat signatures. Just eerie SIS. Project Shatterpoint wasn't a weapon. It was a curse, stasis field that folded entropy around its victims, holding them in a moment forever. The Archiles flagship didn't fall. It didn't move. It became a tomb. The surviving Archiles forces screamed for retreat, but the precursor fleet had moved again, blocking every exit path. And for the first time, Earth spoke directly to the galaxy. Every channel, every frequency, every starship, every council outpost. A voice, calm, weary, but brimming with something colder than wrath. To those who sent the Combine, we know your names. We know your planets. You sent executioners to end us before we could rise. Now you will watch what we become. There was a pause. Then the voice added, quieter, more dangerous. You thought we were the next threat. You were wrong. We are the final one. In the observation chambers of the Galactic Council, silence fell, not from guilt, from terror, because they had not merely failed to exterminate a primitive species, they had armed it, They had forced it to dig deep to find old allies, to awaken impossible powers, and worse, to unite. No more borders, no more nations. Humanity had become a single ruthless machine. The Archelaus Combine was broken. What remained of its fleet was adrift, dying, screaming silently through the void. But Earth was only beginning to rise, and now the stars would remember who made the first move. Above Earth, the stars wept fire. The final Archelaus command fleet, what remained of the once proud extinction force, burned across the sky in streaks of molten metal and disintegrating gravity. Wells. They came in columns, a last desperate push to break the noose Earth had pulled around them, and waiting for them, silent and still in orbit, were the Revenants. The Project Revenant fleet hadn't moved. It hadn't spoken. It hadn't even powered weapons. Until now. The instant the Archelaus fleet crossed the geosynchronous threshold, the human ships lit up like awakened gods. Each was a monstrosity cooed by alien aesthetic standards, but horrifying in function. Fused hulls of salvaged alien metal, powered by antimatter reactors bolted to dead asteroid cores. Some were piloted by AI so unstable they were locked in Faraday cages within their own ships. Others were piloted by humans who had volunteered for no return. They activated simultaneously. The first Revenant ship, the Silhouette of Vengeance, released a payload of ultra-cooled, tungsten rods, massive spears, accelerated via coil guns slung along its spine. They didn't explode. They punched through ships, cutting Archelaus dreadnoughts in half with pure velocity. One rod later tracked, passed through 6 Archelaus vessels before embedding itself in the hull of a 7th, where it detonated from within using a fused logic bomb stolen from Archelaus Tech itself. Another Revenant vessel, Old Glory, deployed drones made from scrap and sharpened hull plating. The drones had no guidance AI. They were piloted by humans on the ground, using latency predictive neural links. Kids, veterans, ex-hackers, each connected through a new kind of internet, built from quantum entanglement nodes. The drones sang. In the upper atmosphere, literally, as they spun, speakers broadcasted Earth's history of war, MLK speeches, Churchill's defiance, war cries from Bori Haka to Apache chants to punk rock anthems. The Archelaus AI were overwhelmed cultural overload. Thousands of years of defiant voices poured into their logic cores. They couldn't process it. They shut down. Precursor fleet did not move. They simply hovered beyond the battlefield, watching. It was not their war now. Humanity had claimed it. From the surface, the Lazarus cannon fired again. A thin, violet lance of folded space erupted from Antarctica. Another Archelaus capital ship winked out of existence. No heat, no explosion. It was simply gone. Ground-based rail platforms in Kenya. And Canada launched slugs too fast to see. They didn't aim for ship hulls. They aimed for command domes. Archelaus warlords, encased in bioreactive armor, were splattered like insects on glass. Above them, the sky turned red and orange as dozens of Combine ships finally realized the trap. Earth wasn't fighting for survival anymore. Earth was punishing. In low orbit, boarding pods launched from human stealth carriers. Inside them, genetically enhanced Marines, wearing powered exosuits, scavenged from downed Archelaus drones and reinforced with human ingenuity. Duct tape, armor plating, adrenaline injectors, and spite. They breached hulls, flooded corridors, and screamed defiance into the corridors of the once invincible Combine. In one ship, the flagship Anathema Crown, an Archelaus general was cornered by a group of human soldiers with mismatched armor and old rifles. He activated his psychic displacer field, prepared to crush their minds. It didn't work. One of the humans stepped forward, laughing. "You think that scares us?" "Buddy, I grew up with a screen full of debt, climate collapse, war news, and existential dread before I turned 13. You're not terror, you're therapy." The general tried to flee. He didn't make it past the doorway. the humans left a message. Scorched into the wall in 3 languages, we warned you. By the end of the 6th hour, the Archelaes had lost 80% of their fleet. The remaining ships tried to flee, but the precursor vessels shifted, not moving by propulsion, but simply appearing where they needed to be. Every exit corridor, every hyperspace lane, every jump point, blocked. One precursor ship drifted silently past an Archelaes. Destroyer. No weapons fired. But the Archelaes ship folded inward. Gravity broke its spine, turned its interior into 4-dimensional spaghetti. The precursor vessel never slowed. On Earth, the sky was filled with trails of burning wreckage. People across every continent stood on rooftops and mountaintops and watched. Some cheered, some cried. Some knelt in silence. They weren't just witnessing victory. They were watching history end. In the command bunker beneath Greenland, Commander Evelyn Ray watched the final report stream in. Her face was smeared with ash, eyes bloodshot, voice hoarse from shouting. But she smiled. Status? A tech turned to her. Last ship's gone dark. We've got a full gridlock on the system. No survivors. Ray exhaled. Broadcast the end line. Across every band in every tongue, the message was sent. This is Earth. Extinction failed. Round complete. The Archelaes had not been defeated by sheer power. They had been broken by persistence, creativity, and rage sharpened by millennia of hardship. And Earth hadn't fought this war with governments or armies. It fought with humanity. Every teacher who knew the right math. Every hacker who found the found backdoor. Every mechanic who welded one more plate. Every grandmother who packed a rifle. Every artist who turned despair into banners of war. Every song. Every scream. Every sacrifice. It had all led here. In the stars above, silence returned. Nothing moved. Nothing dared to. Because Earth had not just survived the galaxy's judgment. It had versed it. And now, the galaxy would remember the species that refused to kneel, the species that smiled into extinction and bit back. The war was over, not in a formal sense. No treaties were signed, no emissaries came bearing apologies or reparations. But in the quiet that followed the last Archelaes ship's destruction, the truth settled across the galaxy like ash after a wildfire. Earth had survived. And something far more important had happened. It had been seen, not just by the Archelaes Combine, not just by the Galactic Council who had ordered the extinction, but by every civilization that had been watching from the shadows, afraid, dismissive, or quietly complicit. Now their screens showed one undeniable fact. Humanity stood. In the days after, a hush fell across the solar system. Debris from shattered Archelaes vessels glowed as it entered Earth's atmosphere, streaking the sky with burning arcs. Children called them shooting stars. The old called them omens. Scientists marked each one with reverent silence. Commander Evelyn Ray sat alone in the Aegis Black command chamber beneath Greenland's bedrock, sipping lukewarm coffee from a dented mug. The monitors flickered softly around her, showing live feeds from across the planet. People rebuilding, laughing, crying. Living. Double quotes. We lost thousands, a voice said from behind her. She didn't turn. I know. A pause. Then, but we could have lost everyone. Ray finally looked back. The man who stood there wore an old-world UN insignia on his shoulder, faded from age. He held a datapad. On it, the list of every Archelaes asset destroyed. Every precursor artifact now recovered. Every human name that wouldn't make it home. You think they'll come back? He asked quietly. She stared at the screen. No, they won't. The Combine's finished. The Council will deny it all. Say it was rogue assets. Disavow the order. But they sent death to our doorstep. And we sent back a message they won't ever forget. A week later, a single Archelaes courier pod breached the edge of the system unarmed, unescorted, and broadcasting a white flag code older than some galaxies. The humans let it through. It dropped into low orbit over Earth, its hull scorched with re-entry and its signal weak. When it opened, there was no warrior inside. Just a translator unit, buzzing weakly as it played a message. A synthetic voice, unsteady, unsure. I speak on behalf of what remains. We underestimated your kind. We offer no justification, only a question. The message paused. Then, what are you? The question rippled across humanity like a stone dropped into deep water. No one answered right away. Then, as humans do, someone spray-painted a reply on the landing site. It simply read, "We are what happens when you try to kill hope." In the following months, alien vessels, not Arcalas, not Council, began arriving on the edge of Sol. Not warships, witnesses, delegations, historians, survivors, from other near-extinct species. They came with offers not of alliance but of understanding. To learn, to ask. To warn their people what Earth had become. The precursor fleet remained silent, still, watching from afar. None dared approach. Humanity did not command them. That was clear, but they circled Earth like guardians nonetheless. Speculation ran rampant. Some said humanity had passed a test. Others whispered darker theories, that Earth itself was seeded long ago, a final weapon disguised as a world. A planetary scale. Failsafe, but the truth was simpler. Humanity had earned its place. Not through genetics, not through superior firepower, through defiance, through stubborn, ridiculous hope, through an instinct older than civilization. If we're going down, we're taking the bastards with us. Years passed. Earth skies became busier. Human ships now patrolled the orbital lanes. The moon became more than a rocket, became a fortress, a lighthouse, a warning. On its surface, carved into stone by laser and plasma torch alike, were the final words of the war, a monument to every human lost. We are not the strongest. We are not the oldest. But we are the last mistake you will ever make. Underneath, etched in steel, Earth remembers. In a distant system, far from Sol, an emergency meeting of the Galactic Council was held in shadow. No debates. No votes. Just one shared realization. They could never touch Earth again, not because of fear, but because they now knew they had tried to erase a species that had never stopped preparing for the end. A species that sang during wars, made jokes in bunkers, and turned death into art. A species whose greatest weapon wasn't technology or tactics, but the refusal to ever stop fighting. One counselor, trembling, whispered a final thought as the chamber fell silent. We tried to exterminate them, and now they will never forget us. Back on Earth, a child asked her grandfather what the war had been like. He said nothing for a long time. Then, with a slow breath, he smiled. "We died," he said, "and we got back up." The child blinked. "Is that why the stars are quiet now?" He looked up at the sky, empty, peaceful. "No," he said, eyes twinkling. "The stars aren't quiet because they're afraid. They're quiet because they're listening." And somewhere far beyond what any human eye could see, something stirred, not an enemy, not a threat, but another world. Another spark. Another civilization watching Earth's story, taking notes, and wondering, what happens if they try? The stars will remember. The galaxy will whisper, and Earth will be ready. Always.